Here's a fun little truth bomb that nobody in your riding group is going to tell you. That engine that just grenaded itself at 40,000 miles, that wasn't bad luck. That wasn't a factory defect. That wasn't the universe conspiring against you and your beautiful motorcycle. That was you. You did that. And the worst part is you've probably been doing it since the day you threw a leg over the thing, completely unaware that you were slowly, methodically, and efficiently destroying the one component that would cost you more to replace than your first car. Let's fix that. Habit number 1, cold starting and immediately riding hard. Let me paint you a picture. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. The sun is out. The roads are empty. You walk into the garage, fire up the bike, let it run for about 11 seconds because you're impatient and it sounds good and life is short, and then you dump the clutch and pin the throttle because you're a person of culture who understands what motorcycles are for. And your engine absolutely hates you for it. Here's what's actually happening inside that motor when you first start it up. The oil has been sitting in the sump all night, or longer if the bike's been parked for a few days. It's cold, it's thick, and it has drained down away from all the critical upper engine components that need lubrication the most. Things like your cam lobes, your valve train, your cylinder walls. When you first fire that engine, there's a brief but very real window of time where those components are running with significantly reduced lubrication while the oil pump works to push fluid back up through the galleries and passages where it needs to be. Now, during that window, if you're just idling or riding gently, the engine isn't working hard, the tolerances are being respected, and the damage is minimal. But if you're immediately hammering on the throttle and screaming through the rev range before the oil has even reached operating temperature, you are generating tremendous heat and friction at exactly the moment your engine is least equipped to handle it. And here's the kicker. This isn't a once and done kind of damage. This is cumulative. Every cold, hard start chips away at your bearing surfaces, your piston rings, your cylinder walls, a little bit at a time, so subtle you'll never notice it in the moment. But your engine will notice. And one day it'll present you with the bill. What's the fix? Let the bike warm up. It doesn't have to be a long, dramatic ceremony. A minute or two at idle, then ride gently for the first few miles until your temperature gauge climbs to normal operating range. That's it. 11 extra minutes of patience in exchange for potentially tens of thousands of additional miles of engine life. That seems like a pretty reasonable trade to me, and I am famously bad at math. Habit number 2. Riding with low engine oil. Raise your hand if you check your oil before every single ride. Now, keep it up if you do it every single time, without exception, including the Tuesday afternoon rides when you're just popping to the shop for 20 minutes. Yeah, that's what I thought. Look, I get it. Checking oil is not glamorous. It's not exciting. Nobody has ever posted a video called "Watch Me Check My Dipstick" and gotten 1 million views. But low engine oil is one of the fastest ways to cause serious, irreversible, catastrophically expensive engine damage, and it sneaks up on you in the most boring and preventable way possible. Motorcycles consume oil. Not all of them. Not all the time. But engines are not perfectly sealed systems, and some oil gets past the rings and burns off during normal operation. Older bikes do it more obviously. Even newer bikes do it to some degree. And if you're putting on serious miles, that level is dropping whether you're watching it or not. The reason this matters so much is that oil does a lot more than just lubricate. It also transfers heat away from engine components. It helps clean the inside of the engine by suspending contaminants and carrying them to the filter. It provides a hydraulic cushion between metal surfaces. When you're running low, all of those functions are degraded. You're running hotter, dirtier, and with less protection simultaneously. Most engines will give you virtually no warning before the damage is done. There's no gradually increasing noise, no dramatic smoke show, no check engine light counting down to disaster. It just runs a little hotter, a little harder, and then one day, something lets go in a very expensive and permanent way. The fix is embarrassingly simple. Check your oil. Before rides, if you can manage it, but at the absolute minimum once a week if you're riding regularly. It takes 30 seconds. Your dipstick or sight glass is right there. Use it. Fall in love with it, even. Name it something, if that helps. Habit number 3. Skipping oil changes. Oh, this one. This is the one where someone in the comments is going to tell me they've been running the same oil for 12,000 miles. and their bike runs fine. And to that person, I say with complete sincerity that you are living on borrowed time and your engine is not running fine, it is running despite you. Oil degrades. That's not an opinion, that's chemistry. Over time and mileage, the base oil breaks down, the additive package gets depleted, and all those microscopic metal particles that get shaved off internal components during normal operation start accumulating. Fresh oil is a pale golden color. Pull the drain plug on oil that's been in there too long, and what comes out looks like something you'd find at the bottom of a neglected fryer at a fast food restaurant. Dark, thick, contaminated, and doing a fraction of the job it's supposed to do. The sludge that builds up from degraded oil is genuinely sinister because it can block oil passages, starve components of lubrication, and coat the inside of your engine with a gummy residue that doesn't just wash away when you finally do get around to changing it. Some of that contamination is permanent. And here's the thing that always gets me about people who skip oil changes to save money. An oil change on a motorcycle costs somewhere between $20 and $60 depending on whether you do it yourself or take it somewhere. A top-end rebuild starts at several $100s and goes up very steeply from there. A full engine replacement on a modern motorcycle can run you anywhere from $1,500 to several $1,000s depending on the bike. The math is not complicated. The oil change is the cheapest possible insurance policy you can buy for your engine, and people skip it to save $40. $40. I've spent more than that on a single meal that I don't even remember eating. Check your manual for the service interval. Stick to it. If you're doing a lot of short trips or riding hard, consider doing it more frequently. It is the single highest return maintenance investment you can make. Habit number 4. Riding the clutch. Okay, real talk. If you learn to drive a car with a manual transmission before you learn to ride, you brought some habits with you on the bike that need to be addressed immediately. And chief among them is resting your hand on the clutch lever while you ride. In a car, riding the clutch is bad enough. On a motorcycle, it's worse because motorcycle clutches are wet clutches on most bikes, meaning they're bathed in engine oil, and the way they fail is through heat. When you're partially disengaging the clutch, the plates are slipping against each other, generating friction, generating heat, and wearing themselves down in a way that's subtle enough that you won't feel it day to day, but significant enough that your clutch pack will need replacing way sooner than it should. And it's not just the clutch itself. The heat generated from a slipping clutch goes into the oil. Your oil then carries that heat into the rest of the engine. So what starts as a bad clutch habit becomes an elevated engine temperature problem, which becomes an accelerated wear problem across multiple components simultaneously. It's like a very slow and boring domino effect that ends with you staring at a repair bill. The other version of this habit is people who slip the clutch excessively at low speeds because they haven't developed the throttle control to manage slow speed riding properly. And look, some clutch slip at very low speeds is totally normal and expected. But if you're relying on heavy clutch slipping to manage your speed regularly, you need to spend some time in an empty parking lot working on your throttle and brake technique. Your clutch will thank you. Your wallet will thank you. I will personally feel proud of you from a distance. Habit number 5. Consistently short shifting. Short shifting means upshifting too early. Before the engine has reached the RPM range where it's producing useful power, and then asking it to pull from those low revs in a high gear. And I know some of you are doing this because someone told you it saves fuel. And to a point, in a car, that's not entirely wrong. But on a motorcycle engine, chronic lugging is genuinely harmful, and here's why. When you ask an engine to accelerate from very low RPM in a high gear, you're putting enormous load on the engine at exactly the point where it's producing the least amount of power. To compensate, the engine has to work exceptionally hard. The combustion events are long and labored, the pistons are under high mechanical stress. The connecting rods, the bearings, the crank, all taking a beating because you're essentially asking the engine to move against more resistance than it's designed to handle at that RPM. Over time, chronic lugging contributes to carbon buildup on your valves and piston tops because the combustion isn't happening efficiently at those low RPMs. It can also contribute to pre-ignition and detonation, which is exactly as bad as it sounds because you're essentially getting uncontrolled combustion events that hammer your pistons and bearings. Every engine has a power band, a range of RPM where it's operating efficiently and producing the torque it was designed to produce. Riding below that range consistently is like asking someone to carry a refrigerator while walking on their knees. Technically possible, not recommended. Deeply unpleasant for everyone involved. Keep your revs in the appropriate range for the riding you're doing. Your bike's manual will usually give you an idea of peak torque RPM. Try to stay somewhere in the neighborhood of that when you're accelerating. Your engine will love you for it. Habit number 6. Consistently over-revving. And now we go to the other end of the spectrum, because of course we do. Look, I'm not here to tell you not to rev your motorcycle. Revving motorcycles is one of the primary reasons motorcycles exist. The sound of an inline four screaming toward redline is one of the genuine great experiences available to human beings on this planet, and I will die on that hill. But there's a difference between occasionally and enthusiastically using the full rev range of your engine versus chronically bouncing off the rev limiter because you think it sounds cool or because you have the throttle discipline of a golden retriever who just discovered a tennis ball. Here's what's happening at very high RPM. Your valve train is moving incredibly fast. At extreme RPM, a phenomenon called valve float can occur where the valve springs can no longer close the valves fast enough to keep up with the camshaft. When this happens, you can get valves that don't fully close, which causes a loss of compression at best, and a valve-to-piston contact event at catastrophic worst. Your rod bearings are also under enormous stress at high RPM because the rotational forces are multiplied dramatically. An occasional blast to redline on a healthy, warmed-up engine is fine. Engines are designed with some margin for this. But if your standard operating procedure is to sit at redline in every gear because you saw someone do it on YouTube, understand that you are methodically stacking up wear on components that are very expensive to access and replace. Use the rev range. Enjoy the rev range. Just don't live at the very top of it every single ride. Habit number 7. Ignoring the cooling system. This one gets skipped constantly, and I think it's because cooling system maintenance is invisible. You can't hear a degraded coolant the way you can hear a bad exhaust. You can't feel it the way you can feel a worn suspension. It just silently gets worse until one day your temperature gauge is climbing in traffic and you're making a series of increasingly desperate decisions on the side of the road. For liquid-cooled bikes, coolant degrades over time. The corrosion inhibitors in the coolant break down, the pH changes, and degraded coolant doesn't just stop protecting as effectively against overheating, it also becomes corrosive to the aluminum and rubber components inside your cooling system. Your water pump impeller, your cylinder head passages, your hoses, all getting slowly eaten from the inside. And aluminum doesn't exactly get stronger when you corrode it. Most manufacturers recommend a coolant flush every 2 years regardless of mileage. Most riders have never done one and couldn't tell you what color their coolant is without looking it up. If that's you, no judgment. But please go check your coolant level and condition this week. Seriously, I'll wait. Now for air-cooled bikes, you might be thinking this doesn't apply to you, and you're right that you don't have coolant to worry about. But you do have fins. Those cooling fins on your engine are the entire reason your engine doesn't melt itself into a puddle, and if you're sitting in heavy traffic on a hot day with an air-cooled engine, you need to be aware of your heat buildup because there's no thermostat bailing you out. Keep moving when you can, and if you're stuck in gridlock for extended periods, consider what your engine temperature is doing. Habit number 8, bad fueling habits. Let's talk about fuel, which is something people think they understand completely and frequently get wrong in ways that cost them real money. First, octane. Your bike's manual specifies a minimum octane rating for a reason. That reason is your engine's compression ratio, and whether the ignition timing is calibrated to prevent knock. If your engine calls for 91, and you're regularly putting in 87 because the difference is 30 cents per gallon, you're creating conditions for detonation, which is uncontrolled combustion that hammers your pistons with shock waves instead of the smooth progressive pressure push of normal combustion. Do that enough times, and you'll be shopping for a piston kit. Second, ethanol. Most pump fuel in the United States these days contains up to 10% ethanol, labeled E10, and some stations are pushing E15. Ethanol attracts moisture, and moisture in your fuel system is bad. Ethanol also degrades rubber components over time. If your bike was built before roughly 2010 or thereabouts, pay particular attention to this because older fuel system components were not designed with high ethanol content in mind. Third, and this one is specifically for anyone who stores their bike seasonally, old fuel is not fuel. After about 30 days, pump gasoline starts to degrade. After a few months, it's creating varnish deposits in your carb or injectors. If you're putting your bike away for winter, either drain the fuel system completely or add a proper fuel stabilizer. Coming back in spring to a bike with a gummed-up carb because you left a half tank of degraded fuel sitting in it for 5 months is a deeply avoidable and deeply irritating experience. Habit number 9. Skipping the pre-ride check. I know what you're thinking. This is a video about engine habits, and now I'm talking about pre-ride checks. Stick with me because this is more connected than you think. A pre-ride check isn't just about making sure your tire isn't flat so you don't die, although that is also a very good reason to do one. A pre-ride check is about catching the small things before they become the large expensive things. And a lot of those small things, when left unchecked, have a direct path to engine damage. Chain tension is the obvious one. An improperly tensioned chain, whether too loose or too tight, doesn't just wear out faster. It transmits irregular loads into your transmission output shaft and sprocket, and over time creates wear patterns and components that are not cheap or easy to access. A too tight chain in particular can bind up the transmission under load in ways that put stress on internal gearbox components. Tire pressure matters for engine wear more than you'd think, because underinflated tires create rolling resistance, which means your engine is working harder to maintain the same speed, which means more heat and more wear per mile than there should be. It's not a massive factor in isolation, but it stacks up. And then there's the stuff that just directly kills engines when you ignore it. Coolant level, oil level, the small oil drip that appeared under the bike overnight that you've been stepping over for 3 weeks because you don't want to deal with it. That drip is telling you something. Listen to it. The pre-ride check takes about 2 minutes. Not 7 minutes, not a full inspection with a clipboard. 2 minutes of eyes-on attention to your bike before you swing a leg over it. That's all. It's the cheapest form of mechanical empathy you can show your motorcycle. Habit number 10. Improper break-in procedure. Here we go. I knew this one was going to be last because I genuinely debated with myself about including it because the internet has approximately 947 strong opinions on this topic, and roughly half of them contradict each other. But let's talk about it properly. When you get a brand new motorcycle or a freshly rebuilt engine, the internal components need to seat themselves against each other. Your piston rings need to seat against your cylinder walls. Your cam lobes need to establish their wear patterns. Your bearing surfaces need to find their geometry. And the way those things happen is through a controlled process of varying load and RPM over the first few 100 to 1,000 miles. The manufacturer break-in procedure in your owner's manual is conservative. Very conservative. It was written by lawyers as much as engineers. It'll tell you to stay under a certain RPM limit and avoid sustained high speeds. And a lot of people read that and then either ignore it completely and immediately flog the living daylights out of their new engine, or they follow it so rigidly that they baby the bike at low RPM for so long that the rings never properly seat at all. Neither of those is ideal. The approach that most experienced mechanics and performance engine builders actually recommend is to vary your RPM frequently during break-in. Don't hold a constant speed. Don't lug the engine at low RPM for extended periods. And don't pin the throttle repeatedly. What you want is varying load, varying RPM, and no sustained high heat buildup in the first several hundred miles. Short rides are better than marathon sessions during this period because heat cycles help the seating process. What you absolutely should not do is take a brand new bike directly to the track on day one and do 20 back-to-back sessions because you're excited and your buddy told you that's how you properly seat the rings. Your buddy's wrong, and so is the forum post he got that from. The bike is new, it doesn't know who you are yet. Give it time to figure you out before you start making demands, and change your oil at the break-in intervals specified in your manual. No exceptions. That first oil change flushes out all the metallic particles generated during the seating process. Leaving that oil in longer than recommended It means those particles are circulating through your engine and grinding away at the surfaces that are trying to establish themselves. It's counterproductive in a way that will make a machinist physically flinch if you describe it to them. And there you have it. 10 habits. 10 slow, quiet, patient ways to turn a perfectly good motorcycle engine into a very expensive and non-functional sculpture. The frustrating thing about all of these is that none of them are dramatic. There's no single moment where you can point at the screen and say that's where it went wrong. It's a cumulative damage from 100 small decisions made over thousands of miles that eventually adds up to a repair bill that makes you seriously reconsider all of your life choices. But here's the genuinely good news. Every single habit on this list is fixable starting today, right now. Not after the next ride, not when you get around to it. Today. The warm-up, the oil check, the oil change, the clutch discipline, the rev range awareness, the cooling system, the fuel habits, the pre-ride check, the break-in procedure. None of it is complicated. None of it is expensive. All of it will extend the life of your engine dramatically and keep your money where it belongs, which is in your pocket and not in your mechanic's vacation fund. If this video helped you, smash that like button and drop a comment letting me know which of these habits you're guilty of. I'm not going to judge you. Probably. And if you're new here and you want more content that treats you like a person who can handle honest information about motorcycles, subscribe. We do this every week, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Catch you in the next one. Fact. The average motorcycle engine contains approximately 873 individual components that can be damaged by bad rider habits. I made that number up completely, but it felt accurate, and that should concern all of us. Goodbye.